Hi, today we want to start with sort of a simple question, and that is, would you rather take a $100,000 salary in New York City, or would you prefer to earn less, say $75,000 in Indianapolis? And the answer is different for every person, but most people, when faced with a question like this, would choose the Indianapolis job over the New York job. Even though the money is less, they recognize that sometimes earning less in total dollars leads you to earning more in real terms in your purchasing power, because where you live makes a big difference in how much you are actually earning. And so we're going to look a little bit more today at your earning of income, that is how you earn money based on what type of job you have, and we'll look at your pay stub and see how to read one of those to understand better whether or not we're earning what we expect to earn, and making sure that there aren't mistakes by our employer. And we'll look a little bit at why or where living makes a difference in your income. So really the first thing is we recognize that location makes a difference. Where you live will drive how much you earn. And sometimes you'll get a different amount in your paycheck as somebody who lives in a different part of the country, and yet you won't have the same kind of purchasing power that they do. So it really just sort of depends on where you live. So when making a decision about a job in the future, you have to sort of weigh these two pieces of information. How much am I earning, and how much does it cost to live where I want to live? And then you can make a decision for yourself as to whether or not you're willing to accept a certain pay in one location that you might not accept in a different one. So let's take a look at some numbers. It's helpful to see. So we can look and say, for example, if I was earning $50,000 in Augusta, Aiken, Georgia, how much is that worth in Asheville, North Carolina? Well, it turns out that in order to earn the same purchasing power in Asheville that you have in Augusta, you'd have to earn $55,000. Why? Because things are more expensive in one location than the other. And we can play around with the numbers a little bit more. We could say, how much would I need to earn to have the equivalent of $100,000? And let's put ourselves at home in D.C. and say, well, if I was going to earn $100,000 in the D.C. area, I'd need to earn $62,000 in Asheville. If I was living in New York City, in Manhattan, I'd need to be earning $153,000. Why? Because if we look at this, we see that housing is nearly twice as expensive in Manhattan as it is in D.C., which is a huge driver in the cost of living. Groceries are also more expensive. Everything is more expensive in New York City than they are in D.C. So if faced with the proposition of earning $100,000 in New York City or $100,000 in Washington, I'd probably take the job in D.C. if I was most concerned about earning the most money in terms of purchasing power. We can look at some other areas as well. California, for example, if we go to San Francisco, we find that it would take $123,000 to have the equivalent of $100,000 in D.C. Or we could look at another place. We could look at somewhere like Wyoming and say in Laramie it would only cost $61,000 to earn the same amount of purchasing power as $100,000 in D.C. And why? Because, again, housing is the biggest driver. It's so much more expensive in D.C. than it is in Wyoming. So where you live makes a big, big difference. If we look at the top 5 communities as far as total cost of living goes, just as a point of interest, the most expensive communities in the United States are New York, New York, Honolulu, Hawaii, San Francisco, California, San Jose, California, and Hilo, Hawaii. And if we look at the least expensive, we find that there are places like Harlingen, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, McAllen, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Ardmore, Oklahoma. So if we're looking to draw some sort of connections or conclusions about the cost of living, we can say that the more expensive places to live tend to be on the coast. They tend to be urban city centers. Places that are less expensive in the United States tend to be the more rural areas where there are fewer people, and the housing costs tend to be lower. And as a result, the incomes tend to be lower as well. And when it comes to earning income, there tend to be 2 broad categories when it comes to the sources of people's income. The first is unearned income. That is money that's earned without working. And that can be any one of a number of things. It could be your inheritance, could be gifts, could be interest on investments. It could be winning the lottery. It could be a lot of different things. Anytime money comes in that you didn't have to work for, it's considered unearned income, as opposed to earned income, which is received through work. Now, earned income can be earned in a number of different ways, which we're going to look at here in just a moment. The most common form of earned income that most people get is from a salaried position or a salaried job. In a salaried job, there's a fixed amount of money you're going to get for doing the job that you have for every pay period. And that pay period can be defined in a number of different ways, but for every pay period, you'll receive the same amount of income. And pay periods depend on your employer. So some employers will pay you by the month, in which case you'll get 12 paychecks throughout the course of the year, and we'll just take your salaried amount and divide by 12 to find out how much you get every month. It could be semi-monthly, which is twice a month, typically paid on the 1st and 16th of every month, in which case you'll get 24 paychecks. There is what we call bi-weekly. Every 2 weeks you'll receive a paycheck, which means some months you'll get 2 paychecks, some you'll get 3. At the end of the year, you'll have had 26 total pay periods, and you could get paid weekly, in which case it's a 52 paycheck job. To figure out how much you should get paid in each of your paychecks, it's simple. You just take the amount you're earning as the annual salary and divide by the number of pay periods. So in the case of a $50,000 annual job, if you were paid monthly, you would take $50,000 and divide by 12. So every paycheck would be worth $4,166.67. And then semi-monthly would do the same process. 50,000 divided by 24 gets us $2,083.33. You'd earn slightly less if you're working in a place that pays you bi-weekly, and even less if you're paid per week. It's also important to remember that even though the paycheck on a weekly basis is less than the monthly basis, if you were to add up all of your paychecks over the course of that year, they would equal the same amount as if you get paid 12 times. So the amount you earn per month is not necessarily as important as it is, or per pay period, as it is your total salary. Now, another type of job is what we call an hourly job. That's where you get paid for every hour you work. The nice part about this is you can increase your income by working more. The downside is that if you don't work because you're sick or you want to take a vacation or something happens at home, you don't get paid. So it's an irregular amount of pay because every pay period is probably going to have a different amount that you've earned because you probably will work 1 or 2 more hours one month than the other. And so it's hard to guess with any sort of certainty what you're going to have every single month. But we can calculate how much we earn pretty easily by taking our hourly pay rate and multiplying it by the hours we work to find out what our gross earnings are. That is our earnings before anything is taken out. In this example of 30 hours worked, if I was paid $8 an hour, I would do 30 hours times $8 an hour to find that I would have been paid $240. Now, when it comes to hourly jobs, sometimes we also have this concept of the minimum wage that kicks in, especially for people with sort of lower skill jobs. The minimum wage is set by the federal government, and that is the least amount of pay that you should be able to receive on an hourly basis. Most jobs have minimum wage or are paid $7.25 if it's a minimum wage job. There are certain jobs that don't get paid $7.25. If you're a table server in a restaurant, you might get paid less than that because you're also going to get tips. Every state sets its own minimum wage, and some states can have a higher rate than the minimum wage at the federal level. So we'll see, for example, that states like California, Oregon, New York, Maine, they all have minimum wages that are set over and above the $7.25 federal level. A lot of states, a lot of localities are moving towards a $15 an hour minimum wage. So where you live will determine how much you're paid if you're an hourly worker and if that job is getting paid at the minimum wage. Another option is what we call commission-based jobs. That's where you're paid a percentage of the total sales that you can generate, which is great if you're into sales and you like to hustle and work hard. You can really make a ton of money through a commission-based job. And really what you're looking at here is taking whatever the total amount of sales is that you've earned and you multiply it by your commission rate. In this case, the worker's earning 5% for every dollar that they sell. So they would take the $120,000 in sales and multiply it by 0.05, and they would be paid $6,000 for the sales that they generated. Some examples of this commission-based kind of job is someone that might sell an automobile, a car salesman, or a house real estate agent. Somebody like that will get paid a percentage of the total cost of the product that you buy. The final type is what we call a piece rate job. That's, again, an irregular type of pay in which you are receiving payment for the number of units of a product that you produce. So if you're picking oranges or apples, then the number of bushels of apples that you pick, you'll get paid a certain amount for each bushel. Or if you're mowing lawns over the summer as a summer job, you might charge $15 per lawn. Well, that's a piece rate job. For every lawn you cut, you get paid whatever your rate is. So if you want to earn more, cut more lawns. In this example, you're paid 25 cents per unit of whatever the product is you're producing. So if you produce 800 units, we would take 800 times 0.25 and find that we would have earned $200 for the work that we did. Now, there's more to compensation than just salary, to more than just cash. We also receive non-compensation or non-monetary compensation as well. Businesses offer a variety of different benefits to try and encourage people to work for them. So on the monetary side of things, we can earn overtime, bonuses, tips, profit sharing. These are all forms of money that the company will pay you over and above your accepted salary or your generally contracted number of hours. And it's a way to incentivize people to work for them or to work longer hours. And some non-monetary compensation can include things like health insurance. Some companies will pay for all of it or maybe just some of it. A 401k retirement plan is something they may offer to you. And if they have matching, then that's both non-monetary and monetary benefits. Vacation days, sick days, child care, parking, country clubs, health clubs. These are all types of compensation that can be offered to you by your employer. When it comes to overtime, typically workers who are qualified for overtime are usually people who are non-salaried employees, typically hourly employees. And every company is different as far as how many hours you have to work to qualify for overtime. For our purposes, we're sort of assuming that you're working a regular 40-hour work week, so any hours over 40 might get you overtime pay. And typically, overtime pay is higher than your regular rate. Usually charged at either time and a half, which is 1.5 times your hourly rate, or what we call double time, which is twice the rate. So in this example, you might be earning time and a half for overtime. So if your hourly rate normally is $8.50, then if we're working overtime, we're going to earn 1.5 times that amount. So we would do 1.5 times the hourly rate to find that our overtime rate is $12.75. So any hour we work over 40 hours in a week, we'll get charged $12.75. So if I worked for 4 hours of overtime, I would get 4 hours at this higher rate, and I would have earned $51 in overtime pay. All of this information helps us to calculate what's known as our gross pay, which is how much we earn before deductions like taxes and other things. And so our gross pay is our total amount of compensation. It includes our regular pay plus any overtime pay that we might receive. How much we get to keep is what we call net pay. And that's what we get to keep in our paycheck after things like taxes are taken out. So as an example of how to calculate gross pay, we take someone who's earning $10 an hour with a job that pays double time for overtime. If they worked 45 hours a week, we want to know how much they earned. So how we would figure this out is first we'd say our regular pay is 40 hours a week at $10 per hour. So regular pay, I'm earning $400. I have 5 hours of overtime. So my hourly rate for overtime work is twice my normal rate. So I'm earning $20 per hour in overtime. 5 hours of overtime at $20 a piece means I'm earning $100 in overtime pay. So my total gross pay is my regular pay plus my overtime. So in this example, my gross pay for the week is $500. The last thing we want to look at is how do you confirm that what you thought you earned is in fact what your employer thinks you earned. And the way to do that is to inspect your pay stub, which is what you receive every pay period from your employer. Every pay stub is a little different. So we're looking at sort of a basic one, but they all have essentially the same information. The first thing they're going to have is your pay period, which is the time that you were earning income. In this case, this person's getting paid every 2 weeks, so it's bi-weekly. And this is just so that you can go back and check your own records to make sure that if they charged you for sick leave or vacation time, that you actually took vacation and sick leave during that pay period. Then we have our pay rate in hours. That helps us to calculate how much we should be earning in gross pay. So we just confirm, did I work 40 hours that week or that 2 week period? If I did, then this is correct. Just confirm that the rate that they're charging is equal to what I expected to be earning, and your gross pay is probably correct. That gross pay there shows us how much we earned in this pay period. There's another bit of information here, that YTD gross pay, which is over here. That YTD stands for year to date. So far, this employee has earned $2,900 during the course of the year. $580 this pay period, and the difference between $2,900 and $580 in previous pay periods so far. The next piece here is deductions. Your employer will take money out of your gross pay for a variety of reasons. Could be because of taxes. You could have income tax like we have here, federal and state. It could be because of FICA tax, which covers Social Security and Medicare. You could have had money taken out to pay health insurance premiums, or maybe they took money out for a 401k contribution. There's a lot of things that go into deductions, but any dollar taken out either voluntarily from you because you said please take it from me, or involuntarily because the government says we're going to take it no matter what, all those deductions are added together, and when we subtract our deductions from our gross income, we end up with our net pay. Now, when it comes to deductions, there are a variety of common ones. Like I said, income tax, both federal and state, the FICA tax, 401k contributions, and insurance premiums. When we take deductions away from our gross pay, we have what's called net pay, or our take-home pay. This is how much comes to us that we can then budget and spend. So it's important you understand that gross pay is the salary you agreed to, but net pay is the actual amount of money you're going to receive. And it's also important because when you're putting your budget together, you have to put your budget together based on your net pay. If you put a budget together based on gross pay, you're going to find that you have way less money at the end of the year than you expected, and you can run into some real problems. We'll talk more about net pay and about deductions like taxes in the next class.